was episode 328 of the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Brandon, this has kind of become, I would say, a yearly tradition, an annual tradition among Seahawks fans, where free agency begins and we all feel like that meme of the stick figure with the stick in his hand, poking the rock, saying, do something.
Just do something, John and Pete. Come on.
Yeah. So here we are. So happy poke a stick with a rock and say, do something to it day.
You know, it is frustrating. I can understand why fans get frustrated because you want your team to be better, and to be better, you want your team to go out and get the best possible players that are available. But it is the reality of the salary cap. It's the reality of finding value in the NFL and really being the best at finding value so you can be the most competitive. Because not only do you want to find the best players, but you want to find the best players for the best value. So the thing is about free agency that I always just have to remind myself this time of year is that oftentimes the guys that are going on day 1 and 2, yes, they may be the best players, but they're not the best value because you have to overpay to get guys to come to you generally.
Okay, I want to blow that up right out of the gate here. But only in specifically only with offensive line.
Okay.
Because in this day and age where the lack of talent that's coming out of college is so great, right? I mean, we hear it all the time from the coaches, all the teams lament about the lack of talent coming out on offensive line, especially in comparison to defensive line, that the few guys that can really play and are very good at offensive line, the chasm between them and then the average dude who's now your, quote, value guy is huge.
Yeah.
So this is the one position group that you just have to bite the bullet and spend big on. And that's what you see a lot of the more successful teams do. And it's frustrating because if there was a year, I would have guessed that they would have gone out and at least signed one of the big names on offensive line. This would have been it.
Yeah.
And it seems as if that has come and gone.
It's not completely come and gone. If you watch day 1, I think the 3 guys that the Seahawks, well, at least Seahawks fans were most interested in, and it sounded like the Seahawks were actually in on Zeitler and actually in on Joe Thuney.
Mm-hmm.
Thuney ends up going to the Chiefs, which, I mean, yeah, that has to hurt a little bit if you're Russ. The Zeitler one hurt too because, you know, there's his former Wisconsin teammate, but it sounded like they were in on it, and maybe he just wanted to go with the Ravens, and that's something that you can't necessarily help either. I mean, you can offer him more, I suppose, and really change his mind. But there was the problematic thing with Zeitler too, is that he's generally right guard, and you're talking about then moving your rookie right guard that had, you know, with Damian Lewis and had success, and moving him to left guard now. And, you know, do you really want to overpay and do that? I would have been okay with it, but these are just considerations that I'm sure had to be made.
Sure. I guess one of the things that became really frustrating for me was the headline: Mahomes, Kelsey, Chris Jones, and I think even Tyreek Hill all redid their deals to create more cap space.
Right.
They all redid their deals. How many of those stories do you hear coming out of Seattle? Not a catfish one.
There's only
not
3 guys.
Not one about the big contracts, right? Russ isn't restructuring. Wags isn't restructuring. You hear KJ on the radio, I ain't taking no hometown discount. You see Shaq take the money, go back to Florida.
Yeah.
Like down the line, nobody's talking about sacrificing. Nobody.
No.
And then and especially in this case where Russ has been upset about the offensive line. And yes, when you pay your quarterback a crap ton of money, it makes it harder to sign other free agents. Well, this would be an opportunity for him. And not only was it just Mahomes who restructured, but you're hearing Tom Brady restructures and on, right? The guys who are interested in winning, that's their number one issue. And they know they need those offensive linemen to do it. They're all restructuring almost every year just to make sure that the cap goes the way it needs to go so they can sign these guys. And Russ complains about getting hit too much. And then from his end of things, one of the things he can do to help does nothing.
From what's been reported, though, is that the Seahawks don't even really need Russell's permission to restructure his deal they just can do it. And apparently that was, and maybe that is for all Seahawks players from what I was hearing from Joel Corey. So in that case,
that's news to me.
In that case, then it's on the organization and not necessarily on the player.
I guess I'd have to hear more about that. I've never heard of that ever. The idea that the team can just redo your deal at any time without your consent.
It's not redoing your deal as far as adding additional years on. It's just when you get your money. So it's converting base salary to signing bonus. And that's what the restructure is base salary to signing bonus. And then you're able to spread out the signing bonus over the additional years of the contract. And for Seattle, there's only 3 guys that are under contract long enough to do that. And it's Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, and then your kicker.
Yeah. And they're not doing it. That's frustrating, right?
Well, it's frustrating if organizationally they have the ability to do that and they're just not. Like if that's part of their contracts that they have that ability to convert base salary to signing bonus whenever they want.
We don't know that. And traditionally it's been the players agreeing to restructure. Yeah. I guess I've just never seen.
Well, it's not that hard to agree either when it's, do you want your money now or do you want it later? Okay, give it to me now.
Yeah, and some of them want it later too. You never know. But I'm just saying that it's not happening with this organization for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And that part was difficult to swallow, because if you are going to go out and get one of those dudes, like that was the time, and you needed guys to step up and help the team out. But look, it's not what happened. All the big names are more or less off the board. And so, yes, now, Brandon, you are value shopping, which is what we've been doing since after Russ's about second year.
There is one guy, though, that came available on Tuesday, and that was center Rodney Hudson from the Raiders when they let him go.
Yeah.
Now,
I'd be in on that.
I would actually prefer that, I think, over Lindsley.
Well, fine. Either one. I mean, either way, you're an upgrade over Posick, and you really do need to get better on the interior. I mean, Aaron Donald's not going anywhere.
No, they need somebody who can handle Aaron Donald on a regular basis. The other interior guys in the NFC West, they're just, it's stacked. So they need to go out and find guys. And yes, it's, and the other thing that I'll say too, is that it is frustrating in the sense when you look at some of the deals for the offensive linemen, that because the cap hit for the first year on some of those deals was so low. They absolutely could have done it. And I've seen, like you're making with the argument, I've seen that argument being made that they didn't do enough of the restructuring to be able to be competitive in those deals. Well, if a guy's first year is only a cap hit of $4 or $5 million, well, the Seahawks went out and paid Akello Witherspoon $4 million for 1 year. Mm-hmm. And if that's your cap hit for an offensive lineman, then they absolutely could have been competitive in those deals.
Yeah, for one of the top tier guys. I mean, the only thing that would make sense here is if they felt really strongly about 2 guys in the draft that they felt like by hook or by crook they can go get in the draft, right? Whether that's trading up or down or whatever it is to manipulate the cap, trading a player to get an extra pick. But that would be the only explanation. And then you're relying on rookies.
Yeah, and I don't think you can even rely on where they're picking in the 50s. Generally, they do overdraft guys. If a guy is down in the 80s, they'll pick him in the 50s or, just how that. But you can't count on that.
No, it's spooky. It's spooky. But, I took a drive into Missoula yesterday. And so I had an hour and a half to sit and think. And so I had myself a good think about this offseason. And it was kind of the idea of, all right, you're John Schneider. What is it that you actually do? Because let's think about it. I mean, you are hamstrung by the cap. You're in a really tough place that way. You have basically no draft capital. I mean, you have a second, but it's a low second. Then your next pick is in the 4th, mm-hmm. right? Like, okay, so what do you do there? Well, there's not a lot you can do. So you kind of get to this point, and it's like, well, you would almost have to trade a bigger name player for picks and some cap relief, just to try to, do something this year.
And the only guy that really falls into that area.
I'm curious if you come up with the same name.
Well, there's 2 guys. I mean, Bobby would be one, but the other one would be Tyler Lockett.
Right. And yeah, Bobby was the first one that came to mind to me. And I don't know how the dead cap stuff would work if you traded him and all that. But right now, I mean, as I look at the machinations of the offseason, that was kind of the one move that I was like, maybe that's really the only play you have here.
I still think you would have difficulty finding a team that's going to be willing to take on a linebacker salary that's that high and give up high picks. I think that would be tough to do.
Yeah, I do too. So that was kind of where I landed when it was all said and done. Is like, I don't really see that happening. So then what do you do this offseason to get better? And the more I thought about it, man, this upcoming season, I've got a bad feeling about this. This does not feel like it's going in a good direction.
Just 3 days into free agency, that's where you're at, huh?
A little bit. Now, part of that was seeing Shaq go. And not that that was unexpected by any means. I feel like out of all the guys that they could have brought back that would have been at a larger number, he was probably the least likely of those guys to bring back. So it wasn't a stunner that way. It was more that they didn't get one of the offensive linemen. Because I genuinely believe that this offseason, they need 2 really good offensive linemen, a third that can play, right? Maybe not the greatest guy, but a third dude that you can fall back on.
Yeah, like what a boy he was supposed to be.
Yeah, and then one more quality edge rusher. I think that's what you need this offseason to go from 12 wins, NFC West championship in a first-round exit to 1 or 2 playoff wins, right? And competing for Super Bowl. It feels like we're going backwards on that.
It feels that way now, and that's why I say it's only 3 days into free agency. And yeah, I absolutely. Okay, if that's the way that it's trending and you can't... I guess when I looked at the Tooney deal to the Chiefs and I saw $16 million per year on average, yes, the cap hit is low, but for $16 million, I feel like you have to be able to find 2 guys at center and at guard. And I don't even know if Tooney is to the level that you would say you absolutely break the bank, pay top of the market to, especially when I see the New England Patriots spending like crazy in free agency, and they didn't value their own guy at that level and allowed him to leave. But yet, and normally they're the ones that are playing the comp pick game, right? That they'll go and, okay, allow a guy to get top of the market, and then they'll kind of set out free agency. But
sure.
All in this year.
Real quick though on that. Do the Patriots have a long reputation for finding offensive linemen everywhere and developing them really well?
Yeah, that's one of their strengths.
Okay, there we go. I can't remember their offensive line coach's name, but he's a legend. Like, I don't know how he does it. He's amazing. So if you have that resource in your back pocket, that's a position group you don't pay. It's a lot like with Shaq here in leaving. I mean, Pete Carroll is great at finding DBs and getting them up to speed and making them very serviceable, if not great players. And it doesn't matter where they come.
Yeah. Pete Carroll gets DBs paid, and whoever the offensive line coach is for the Patriots, he gets offensive linemen paid. So, okay.
Yeah. So that's just not a position group I'd pay for if I was Bill Belichick. And I mean, that kind of brings me back to this offseason, what you do if you're the Seahawks. And it's like, all right, let's see if they can get 2 offensive linemen that are difference makers at center and guard. Maybe they can bring Dunlap back. Maybe the market isn't as good as he hopes out there. I don't know. Because really, I fine with them getting rid of Shaq or not bringing Shaq back and bringing in, say, like Witherspoon or whoever. I mean, I watched DJ Reed come in last year and be a baller.
Right.
You know, like, I would have told you he blew. Like, I don't know crap about DJ Reed. He's probably no good. Can't believe they're doing this. We're going to be weak on that side of the field. Nope, he was a baller. Like, they do this all the time. Yeah. So I'm not worried about the secondary. And really, the secondary started playing better when the pass rush became more effective. And the pass rush became more effective when Carlos came into town. And so they need that guy. And it seems to me that when we were talking about paying offensive linemen or defensive linemen, you have to pay the offensive linemen because the next tier down is just trash. When it comes to D linemen, there is so much talent and so much athleticism out there on defensive line. It's so much more in comparison to offensive line that's where you can find those value contracts. And actually, this last 2 years are a great example. Clowney and Dunlap, right?
Yeah.
They can do something like that again. So I have some faith in that. So I think what you have to do going into this offseason is get those two offensive linemen, bring in that edge pass rusher, and then let Pete Carroll figure out, Pete and Russ sit down, and they say, look, here's what we're going to do. Pete, you take care of the defense. You make that secondary work with, no-name dudes like you always do, and bring in an extra edge rusher and make that defense as good as possible. Russ, this is what you're going to do. You're going to run the offense like Peyton Manning did when he became a Bronco, when he got Adam Gase paid. Like, look, the offense is just yours. Waldy's your boy, and he helps you cook stuff up. But you just take care of that, and I'll stay out of your freaking hair, and you stay out of my freaking hair. A lot like the Bears did back in the day with Buddy Ryan and Ditka, right? One dude just takes half the team, and they do their thing, and you move forward. I think that's about the only thing they can do this offseason. And then that way, if it all goes to pot throughout the season, offensively, it's on Russ's head, number one. And then number two, it gives him the opportunity to get that MVP that he really seems to want. And then, it just kind of frees up the whole thing.
It seems like the best way to move forward, at least for this 1 year. And you almost wonder if that was how it was initially going to work for the 2020 season, because it almost seemed to operate that way for the first half of 2020. But because Pete Carroll and the Seahawks defense was on a historically bad pace, like, he could not allow that. And so I just wonder if things would have shaped up differently had they been able to get a pass rush a whole lot sooner, if it would have been on track to be, bad, but not historically bad, if they would have just kept with the program.
I think it would have been a much different season if Shoddy and Russ could figure out how to deal with cover two.
Yeah, well, that too.
I think that's the bigger factor there.
And maybe with this offseason, that is something that Russell is able to work with the new OC on, so they have a plan for that. I just can't imagine that they didn't. I just can't imagine that they didn't have a plan for it, or couldn't have figured out a plan for it over the last 8 weeks of the season. That was weird to me anyway. But here we are.
Well, they didn't. We sat here on the show and was like, okay, do these things. Check it down. Start running.
Get rid of the ball faster. Throw it to your tight ends.
Yep. Nope. Yeah. You can't be bothered to do none of that. Let's just keep taking shots down the field like the Chiefs did in the Super Bowl against cover two and got waylaid.
Maddening. So you brought up Carlos Dunlap, and I did want to talk about him a little bit because he was released by the Seahawks, and he was one of those guys to where you said, okay, $14 million, yes, for 1 year. That's a really tough cap hit to try and take, but it was such a big impact for Seattle when he came in. The thing that made the most sense, obviously, was extending him. But one of the things that we heard this last week, Ian Rappaport was on 950 KJR last week, and I think he provided kind of the cleanest explanation for why Dunlap was released ahead of free agency.
When a trade happens, there's a lot of things that you can negotiate, right? You can get a raise, you can sometimes get a pay cut, you can get don't tag me. From what I understand, part of the deal with him getting traded was Seattle saying, you can be a free agent and then we'll see. So he's going to go out, he's going to test the market. It sounded like he liked Seattle and Seattle liked him. So in like a week, are we talking about a Carlos Dunlap reunion? Like, possible.
Yeah, we heard a lot of that with Clowney too. Oh, Clowney likes Seattle and Seattle likes Clowney.
But Clowney was only on a 1 year deal. Seattle could have kept Dunlap under contract for the 1 year. But if it was part of his deal that, okay, as part of this trade, you're going to release me ahead of free agency, then that at least explains to me why they did it.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm not even talking about that half of the things, but you're 100% right there. I mean, just like you brought up with the clip there, it does seem like that was the wink, wink, nod, nod agreement, right?
Yeah.
But going forward was, Oh, but he could be back because Dunlap likes Seattle and Seattle likes Dunlap. We heard that cheerleading crap with Clowney too.
Yeah.
And got strung along. So I guess we'll see. I just hope, I guess as a fan and from somebody from the outside looking in, what's frustrating is they always seem to wait so long to address the major issues, right? Like, holy crap, how long did it take for them to address edge rusher last year? It was halfway through the freaking season when they finally brought Dunlap in.
They addressed it by getting Bruce Irvin and Benson Mayowa, but they didn't really address it to the level that they needed to.
Exactly. And that's what I'm getting at. And it feels that way with offensive line right at the moment. And it is. It's frustrating. Now, on the flip side of things, if you think about it, I mean, well, we still have Shell coming back. We got Lewis coming back. We got, Dwayne Brown out there. I mean, really, you're only 2 guys away on the offensive line. And I mean, there's guys out there that you're familiar with that are on the market still at guard. I mean, whether that's bringing back Fluke. There's Carpenter out there. Sweeze is back out on the market. I mean, now retreading the guys that Russell didn't like, I don't know if that's the way to go, but it is an option.
I think as long as you were to address it with one big name and then one retread, I think that would be enough. If some of those other things that you talked about are able to be implemented during the season. And that's just something that we're going to have to see. That it reminds me of something that I heard listening to Stacey Rost of 710 ESPN. She was saying, there's certain things that need to be fixed that you just can't trade for. Unfortunately, it seems like there's more of those things this offseason than there is issues that you can fix through acquisitions.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you're just filling in 1 or 2 pieces through free agency and you're right in it, right? It feels more like you're 4 or 5 pieces away and you really don't have the chips to go after those pieces. You don't really have the draft capital. You don't have the cap space. And it's a tight place, man. It's a tight place to be. That's why I say turn the offense all over to Russ this year. And hopefully that placates him throughout the year as the team maybe struggles a little bit more this year.
So one of the things that I'm now just seeing as we're recording here, Josina Anderson, on Tuesday, we were kind of led to believe that Rodney Hudson was being let go. And now on Wednesday, we're hearing that he's going to be, they're trying to move him via trade, which to me, that made a lot of sense anyway, is why wouldn't you trade a player like Hudson who, he is under contract, but I think that's a contract that teams would be willing to take on for Pro Bowl caliber center.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you trade him? Even if it's for swapping, say the Seahawks swap their 2nd round pick for the Raiders' 3rd round pick and get Rodney Hudson in the process. If it's just going to take you still have the same number of draft picks, but you're just moving back in the draft, at least get something if you're the Raiders. That would make sense to me.
That's not surprising to me that they've decided that they're going to go ahead and try to trade him, because I think his trade value is actually significant, right? So the idea that the Seahawks would just have to swap a 2nd and a 3rd to get Hudson, doubt it. I mean, at the bare minimum, if it's just a pick swap, at the bare minimum, it'd be like a 2 for a 4 or 2 for a 5, something like that. I mean, he's a player with value.
Yeah, a pick swap. But on Tuesday, it sounded like he was being released. So that's why I would even suggest the pick swap, because they were at that point. So I don't know, the whole situation, it seems weird to me considering how many of their offensive linemen they've already moved on from. Maybe that's why Hudson's saying, okay, well, let me out of here too. But it does make me think then, if you could work something out to where you could trade and then restructure or extend the player and to make that cap hit a little bit lower so you can still be competitive to go out and get some of those other pieces, I'd still like to see that.
I would love to see a Hudson trade now, because I just don't know that you're going to find a guy like that in the 2nd round, right? If you could just trade your second round pick for him, do it.
Oh yeah, and that would make a pick swap, even if it were for a 4th or 5th, even better, because at least then you have another pick.
Yeah. I mean, I'd do it without the pick swap, to be honest. Right. I'd trade the second rounder for Hudson right now in a heartbeat. Boom.
Yeah, because you're talking about trying to find a center in the second round already.
Right. Exactly. And so why not get a guy that is relatively young and is very good?
Yeah,
right?
He's I think he's going to be 31, or he just is coming off his season where he was 31.
I thought he was a little younger than that.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, dudes like that play until they're, 33, 34. Shoot, Dwayne Brown's 36. So
speaking of old dudes that used to be Raiders offensive linemen, what do you think about Incognito?
That dude's too old, and no thanks.
Okay. I just didn't know if he had crossed the too old threshold yet.
Isn't he 38?
Probably.
I'd rather have Sweeze or Carpenter, or I don't know.
I'd rather have Fluker over Sweeze or Carpenter.
Well, the only other acquisition really and not even acquisition, but a contract that the Seahawks have made is that Poona Ford is under contract now for 2 years. He was set to be signed with a restricted free agent tender, so they could have tendered him at a second round level, and they could have tendered him at the first round level, which would have been more money for him. And he could have been under a 1-year deal for this year. But they're able to make it work and essentially sign him for about somewhere in between of that first round tender amount and the second round tender amount. And then you get an extra year out of Poona Ford. It seemed like a win-win deal for everybody.
Yeah, everybody happy. Going to be pounding the Poona for 2 full years here. That feels good. I mean, it's one of those deals where when I saw it come across the phone, it's like, hey, all right, cool. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, it doesn't blow you away.
It's
just he was going to be on the team anyway, and now he's going to be on the team for 2 years. So it doesn't feel like a huge win.
So you're basically like glossing over the Witherspoon acquisition.
There's a reason for that. I'm not that excited about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll have faith in Pete when it comes to DBs and just go from there.
I know he fits into the size requirement, and yeah, he had. I've probably seen his pass breakup against DK Metcalf about 500 times from people retweeting it over the last day or so. He fits the size, but he doesn't seem like a guy who's going to really. Trey Flowers has the size, and he's always in there on run plays, making tackles. And Witherspoon, to me, he's not that to me. I don't know. I'm not that excited about it. Justin Coleman went down to Miami for less than Witherspoon got. And Coleman, we saw him play outside corner in Detroit before he got hurt. I think he could have been fine if you bring him in. If DJ Reed can be a starting corner outside at his size now, I feel like they can let up that requirement that Pete tends to look for and bring back a guy who you knew worked well in your system.
Sure. And that would have been a possibility. But also, too, I mean, the answer for replacing Shaq might be on the roster already. And whether that's Trey Flowers or whether that's Marquise Blair making a transition to corner.
Sure.
I could see something like that. I mean, there's your guy that they're super fired up about, and that gets him on the field, considering that you have Diggs and Adams back there. And yeah, he's a thumper. And if they tried to make that transition from safety to corner with Trey Flowers, do you think they'd be afraid to do that with somebody that they're as high on as Marquise Blair?
Yeah, get him on the field somehow.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's possible. So I guess Witherspoon just adds to that.
He's a guy.
Yeah. I just, at $4 million, that just seemed a little bit high.
Yeah.
Since we're already talking about trying to save at that position based on what they've been able to do historically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the difference of $4 million that the Seahawks got Witherspoon for, and Jason Verrett, who stayed with the 49ers, got $5.5 million. So
yeah,
I can look at those two corners and I know which one is better.
Well, maybe. DJ Reed probably outplayed Verrett last year.
True.
With a change of scenery in Pete's system. I don't know. I guess that's where I go with all that is like, look, whatever they want to do there, I'm going to give them all the grace of God on when it comes to corner and the defensive backfield. That's fine by me. Hell, I'll even give you a lot of grace when it comes to linebackers. I mean, whether it's been, Bobby or KJ or Barton or now Brooks, They seem to do pretty well with linebackers. They do okay on defensive line. They're trash on the offensive line. And
they do well at receiver. They've traditionally done pretty well at receiver.
Yeah, more or less.
They are the anti-Patriots when it comes to receiver because they're having to sign Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne to big deals just to come to New England.
I think out of all the deals that New England put out there, I was like, did they get better at wide receiver? I don't think they did.
No, they just got dudes.
That was a little crazy there, but they also made a lot of moves that made sense too. So who knows?
And Aguilar was better last year with the Raiders when he got out of Philly, but still, I saw so much of terrible play out of him in Philly that I just wonder if it's a 1-year deal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wonder how much they get per drop. How much is Nelson making out for that?
Well, I think we've addressed free agency to the point to where I think we can now move on to the bad Russ takes that have piled up over the last 2 weeks. I know people are tired of hearing about Russell Wilson because I see the tweets, but I do feel that it's important, Adam, as Seahawks historians, because really, considering the amount of time that we put into this, we really are documenting Seahawks history here.
Okay, well, so number one is about 30 minutes, guys, more or less, until we had to be here. I put it off for as long as possible. And so here we are. Now, in terms of feeling like we have a responsibility to talk about all the things that we've already talked about regarding the story that was never going to happen in the first place, maybe we need to do that. But overall, I feel like been covered.
Well, I want to start with one of the takes that I think was, it's hard to pick among all the bad takes of which one is my favorite. But I think this one from Tony Pauline of Pro Football Network on his Draft Insider podcast, this may have been my favorite bad Russ take from the past week.
What I was told by somebody close to the situation yesterday is that the Seahawks want to trade Russell Wilson as much as Russell Wilson wants out of Seattle, which kind of surprised me. It's very unlikely to happen this year, or it's going to be tough for it to happen this year because of Russell Wilson's salary cap number and the fact that you have a deflated salary cap. We should have mentioned that the salary cap just came in or was announced at just over $182 million. So that's going to make it very tough for the Seattle Seahawks to move Russell Wilson, or at least that's what people are telling me. They're also telling me if they can't move him this year, which they don't expect to happen, this will be Russell Wilson's final season in Seattle.
The Seahawks want to trade Russell Wilson as much as Russell Wilson wants out of Seattle. So this is the perfect statement that can be a barometer of interpretation for anybody. Because if you go back and you look at the Adam Schefter tweet, where it named Russell's agent as the source of the information, Russell Wilson has not demanded a trade. His agent, Mark Rogers, told ESPN. Wilson has told the Seahawks he wants to play in Seattle, but if a trade were considered, and he lists the other teams. So if you go back to the agent's statement, Russ wants to play in Seattle. So if the Seahawks want to trade Russell Wilson as much as Russ wants out of Seattle, they may be okay with each other.
Yeah, I mean... All right, we'll go down this path one more time. So this is all in the eye of the beholder, right?
Like that's what I'm saying. This is the eye of the beholder type statement.
Right. So if you're the type of person that is like, look, this is what the agent said, these are his words verbatim, then sure, Russ wants to play in Seattle. If you're the type of person that's like, yeah, that's what he said, but that is absolutely a veiled shot saying, get me out of here to one of these 4 teams because his camp is talking, which I think is closer to the case. I think he would have been fine leaving. I don't know. Honestly, it doesn't fucking matter because at the end of the day, the bad takes all didn't take into account what he did talk about in there, which is the cap hit makes us pretty much prohibitive.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a quarterback or a top pick in return. It's not looking that way. The teams either that can give them up won't, or the teams that would give them up don't have it, a.k.a. the Bears. So this just isn't happening this year. And is it possible next year? Sure. It makes a little more sense next year in terms of the way that the cap numbers are and all that stuff. And depending on how this season goes, right? If the offensive line doesn't improve at least a little bit, or if they do run the hell out of the ball and Russ feels slighted or whatever the hell it is, or if they end up going 7-9, like, randomly, sure, this could very much easily be Russell's last year. But I guess what it all came down to is that we all knew, and we've all talked about it, and it's been documented ad nauseum. Russell Wilson is going nowhere this year. And the team has actually come out and said, we are not trading Russell Wilson. Not even for 3 first-rounders, a couple starters, and a 3rd-round pick, and, a free Mercedes-Benz, and like whatever else, a bag of footballs, whatever else the Bears were willing to try to offer. They're just not doing it. It's not happening. The story's old. I'm tired of talking about it. Like, Russ is on the team. This is what we're doing. Let's go.
All right. Well, you're still going to have to sit through the rest of my clips because this is your show too. Or you know what? I can monologue. That's what I'll do from now on. You just sit. If you don't want to respond, you just sit back and take off your headphones. I will plow through the rest of this.
All right. I'm a little hungry. Maybe I'll find a snack. Let me do that.
This next take is one that I did pick up on because I do think that there's something to what Chris Sims says in that this idea, the issue is going to kind of continue to hang over the Seahawks. Yes, this came out that, the Bears made this offer. The Seahawks said no, but I still don't think it's going to go away. People are going to still cling to this for as long as they can, unless Russ comes out and says something to address it directly. And here's what Sims had to say.
It's going to be on Russell Wilson to handle it, in my opinion. I mean, that's where I talk. He's the one that brought this out. He's the one that went full scorched earth on the Seattle Seahawks organization here. So, it's him that has come out and said he's not happy. Seattle can just keep going, talk to Russell. We were good. We're giving him a crap load of money. Boatloads of it. Look, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, the Super Bowl ended, and he decided to attack every aspect of the football team, basically. So that's on Russell Wilson and how he wants to, just discuss this, whatever, and deal with the situation. And that's going to be a pain in the butt.
So he's the one that went full scorched earth on the Seahawks organization, and Russ decided to attack every aspect of the football team, basically. Those were the quotes.
Yep, they sure were. We've talked about this again for the last couple of weeks. Everybody being like, oh, Russ is lighting the earth on fire. No, he's not doing that. But he's also not just being like, yeah, I'm going to be on the Seahawks next year, and I'm looking forward to working with Pete. He hasn't been that either. It's been somewhere in between. They've been leaking stuff out, so his image still looks squeaky clean. It's the same catfish. It's the same exact stuff.
I feel like it's building to the point to where people in the national media especially are starting to buy their own takes that, they're listening to what other people in the media are saying, and now it's become a product of their own narrative that they've created. And it's really not what Russ said. I mean, yeah, you can extrapolate things as far as him going full scorched earth, but I can play the clip again of Dan Patrick and Russell Wilson if we need to go back and really hear of him going full scorched earth. Okay.
Yeah, no, we don't. Because again, it's been covered. Like, if all the media want to have a catfish over it, then let them. Like, there just comes a point where we're like, I can't. And I think most Seahawks fans are here as well. I don't really need to hear any more like bad takes. Just for the sake of figuring out who takes the bad take cake. Like, it just doesn't matter. They're all wrong. We all know what's happening now. So it's just a matter of people like Florio who can't shut his dirty mouth about Russell Wilson not being on the Seahawks. I mean, I don't know is it going to be some point where he finally comes out and secretly admits he just wants him to be a Viking? Like, is he ever going to do it?
Next up with my bad takes is Mike Florio. And we heard this last week. This was one of my least favorite stories, is that season ticket holders got a letter last week, and that letter did not include a mention of Russell Wilson's name. And so this is a sign. This is a sign, Adam, that Russell Wilson might not be back. And Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, he went on 950 KJR, and he had the easy explanation of why Russ was left out of that letter to season ticket holders.
Here's the easy explanation, and this is coming from a guy who spent 18 years practicing law. And when you litigate, when you handle cases in court, you deal with cleaning up the worst case scenario that has played out in some way, resulting in the necessity for litigation to figure out who did what, who said what, who owes what to whom. On the other end, when you help companies or individuals plan their steps and avoid potential worst case scenarios, you give advice like, for example, we probably shouldn't mention Russell Wilson in the letter to the season ticket holders because the last thing we need is some smartass to file a class action lawsuit claiming that we misrepresented that Russell Wilson was going to be part of the team this year at a time when we knew or should have known there was a chance he was going to be traded. So to the extent that we're marketing the presence of Russell Wilson to get season ticket holders to renew, probably not the smartest thing to do. And I think that's the easiest explanation. Someone from Vulcan, the company that oversees the business interests of Jody Allen, said, we can't do this. We can't have this in the communication because we don't need any problems on the back end if we do trade this guy. It doesn't mean they're going to, but it means at least someone on the business side is recognizing there's a possibility it's going to happen, and they don't want any blowback, legal or otherwise, that they led people to believe Russell Wilson was going to be on the team.
Let me just get this straight. Spock from the planet Vulcan decided that in lawyer speak, they probably shouldn't put Russell Wilson's name in a letter to the season ticket holders that really doesn't matter at all because it would somehow make some liability for a class action lawsuit that for putting his name in a letter or something.
Because Adam, if you even reference the fact that Russell Wilson threw 40 touchdown passes and set a franchise record, or if you even reference the fact that he won Walter Payton Man of the Year in a letter to season ticket holders, they're just going to assume that he's going to be with the Seahawks next year. You know what the easy explanation is that they just forgot. They take Russell Wilson for granted a lot like we do sometimes when we talk about the games and what went right and what went wrong. And we don't necessarily just gush over how great Russell Wilson was in any particular game because there's other stuff you can talk about.
Or maybe, just maybe, the Seahawks were still sitting there listening to offers from, say, like the Bears or whatever team, right? When this letter came out. And they were like, well, he's probably going to be on the team, but we don't know 100% for sure. Like, we're 90% sure that it's going to be here. I mean, somebody could still blow us away with a Godfather offer, you know, and this was a couple weeks ago, right?
Sure.
So, all right, just leave them off of this one letter that doesn't matter at all to the season ticket holders.
Because you don't want, if Chicago or somebody came in with an offer that blew you away, you don't want the letter showing up to season ticket holders with a player that's not on the team anymore.
Right. So you just cover your ass just a tiny bit for that tiny percentage of a chance that you do something stupid like trade a franchise quarterback in his prime and you call it good. Like Florio, I've decided, I think he may represent the unholy alliance between some of the worst things about our culture today. Mainstream media members and lawyers. He's one all in one, and he twists all this crap up in about the worst possible way. I'm surprised he doesn't slither into the studio on his belly.
I actually enjoy listening to Florio when he's not talking about the Seahawks.
I know, me too, somehow.
But it's his takes, particularly on Russell Wilson, that are uniquely terrible for whatever reason.
Bad take cake. I think he gets it.
He gets it. Well, the last one that I wanted to talk about from this past week, it brings me to the article from the New York Daily News. And Pat Leonard, he posted this article on March 15th. And we've mentioned Pat Leonard's name before because he was the one who was covering the Quentin Dunbar situation last year. Mm-hmm. And so to go back to Witherspoon, if we're paying Witherspoon $4 million and it means that Quentin Dunbar isn't coming back and we don't have to deal with any of that drama this offseason, then it's $4 million well spent.
Hooray!
But on the first day that we're getting free agency news on March 15th, Pat Leonard comes out with this article with the headline, Pete Carroll high on Sam Darnold as possible Russell Wilson replacement. Source. The start of the article starts out, Seahawks coach Pete Carroll has a high opinion of Sam Darnold and could end up trading for the Jets quarterback if Seattle deals Russell Wilson, a source told the Daily News on Monday. Keep an eye on Seattle for Darnold, the source says. And when I read that line, Adam, that to keep an eye on Seattle for Darnold, I thought to myself that I had heard that somewhere, and I was searching through past articles. I couldn't find it. So anyway, I read on. It says the prerequisite would be a Wilson trade out of town, but here's the thing. Pursuit of Wilson is heating up. Word on the street is that the Chicago Bears are leading the charge in pursuit of Wilson, with GM Ryan Pace and Coach Matt Nagy on the hot seat entering their fourth year. They get into a couple more paragraphs about other teams, the interest in Sam Darnold. And again, here's this scorched earth thing popping up again in this article.
Why does this phrase bother you so much?
I don't know. It says Wilson,
yeah, it's a mischaracterization by the media. That's an exaggeration.
Wilson scorched the earth in Seattle after watching this year's Super Bowl from the stands, complaining publicly on the Dan Patrick show about his poor offensive line and lack of personnel power in Seattle. Yeah, I don't know why they're using the scorched earth term. I don't get
it. Because it's clicky. I mean, it's one of those things, right? It's a hot takey phrase. Fine, if you want to classify it as scorching the earth, to be like, I'd rather have some offensive line help, and I guess eventually, if you can't get it here, I'd like to be traded. That's scorched earth. Then okay, if that's scorched earth to you, then it is.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things you can just define yourself. But the article goes on a couple more paragraphs about the Bears and their situation, but then it gets to another paragraph about Colin Cowherd. It says, interestingly enough, Fox Sports' Colin Cowherd reported this exact same connection late last week, saying that the Bears were trying hard to get Wilson and that the Carroll-Darnold pairing was worth watching. So I want to go to the audio of the trade proposed by Colin Cowherd, and it wasn't actually referenced in the story, but I went out and got it.
Chicago gives Seattle 5 first-round picks. Now, they may not be great picks if they get Russell Wilson, but they give them 5 first-round picks. Nobody else is probably going to offer that. And then Seattle has a deal to get a quarterback simultaneously with that. Keep your eye on Sam Darnold, USC guy, Pete Carroll, USC guy. In December, here's what Pete Carroll said about Sam Darnold. I think he's really talented. Great throws. He's a real quarterback. He sees things. He makes big plays and big throws in difficult situations because of his talent. It's just a matter of time. Sam's going to be a really big-time quarterback. He's thrown a lot of balls in 3 years. He's had a lot of experience. It's going to pay off in the long run. Sounds like Pete Carroll likes Sam Darnold.
There's 3 things I really want to hit on from this quote from Cowherd. 1, the Bears are trading 5 first-round picks? How does that work?
Inconceivable. Or maybe it's more impossible.
It's kind of impossible unless you actually have 5 first-round picks, because you can't trade. You can only do 3, and apparently there's something that says you can do 4 if you trade on the actual day of the draft.
Right, but that's it. You can 4 years. 4 years in the future is the max. 4 years in the future is the max.
They don't have that many. The other thing, keep your eye on Sam Darnold. This is where I recognize the quote that was sourced in the New York Daily News article. Maybe it's a common enough phrase that both would just say that. But he also sourced Cowherd in the story. So I don't know. That was a clue to me.
A clue to what?
I'll get there.
Okay.
But do you know where those quotes came from that Colin referenced? I think he's really talented without question. He's got great throws in him. He's a real quarterback. He sees things. He makes big plays and big throws in difficult situations because of his talent. All quotes attributed to Pete Carroll. Do you know where those comments came from?
I'm guessing the majority of those comments, short of he's made a lot of throws in the last 3 years, although I guess that would have applied at USC, right? Didn't he start for 3 years at USC? Was at the combine.
These were all quotes from December 12th, 2020, in an article 2 days before the Seahawks played the New York Jets.
Oh, okay.
So it's a head coach talking up the opposing quarterback, saying some nice things ahead of the game.
Yeah, not only that, he's a USC guy. He's trying to make sure that guy gets paid.
So then there was more on this Darnold to Seahawks connection. On Monday morning, on ESPN's Get Up, analyst Dan Orlovsky, who's a former NFL quarterback, well known for running out of the back of the end zone and taking a safety when he played for the Lions, he posed this hypothetical three-way trade between the Jets, Bears, and Seahawks to get Wilson to Chicago and Darnold to Seattle.
Dan Orlovsky has been in the lab and he's figured it out. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah,
you tell us how they're going to make this deal.
Get the shallow and narrow-minded people out of here. Okay, first of all, stop thinking it's just Chicago and Seattle involved. It takes 3 to tango, okay? If I'm the Bears, I'm calling the New York Jets and going, all right, the Jets, we're going to give you Khalil Mack. We'll give you our second-round pick. Maybe we'll give you Kyle Fuller or Allen Robinson, so you get a lot better really quickly. Jets. Then you're going to send Seattle 3 first-round picks, not the number 2 pick this year, but the latter first-round pick, then your 2 ones next year, and Sam Darnold. There you go, Seattle. Seattle, send Russell Wilson to Chicago. So Seattle gets a young quarterback, also 3 first-round picks to work with if they want to move up and go get somebody else this year. Chicago answers their desperate question. Who's going to play quarterback? You've had a great defense for like 30 years. It hasn't given you anything. And the Jets get 2 really, really, really good players and also another pick. So they still can get their quarterback this year and they get a bunch of picks still moving forward, also with plays. You got to stop thinking it's just Chicago and Seattle. We got to get creative and courageous, Ryan Pace, with how we're going to make this happen.
Or you can just drop it all together because it ain't happening. But that's cool. Good hair, Dan.
Well, this was on Monday, and so it was a couple days before, the Bears then went off and got Andy Dalton, which it's hilarious.
Even before then, though, man.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But there are, I think, some other clues here too. But I guess we can gloss over the fact.
I'm very interested on this trail of breadcrumbs that you've seemingly uncovered here and where that's leading us.
I have. I've uncovered some things. This was bothering me that I was recognizing all these pieces. And okay, we can skip over just how dumb the potential trade is because yes, it's absolutely not happening. And one more piece of evidence that jumped out at me because it was weird to me that they were using these Pete Carroll quotes, quote unquote, gushing over Darnold as some kind of evidence that he's coming to Seattle. And so it got me wondering, where is this coming from? And it has to be Sam Darnold's agent, because a month ago, there was the exact same article about how how Kyle Shanahan of the 49ers, he loves Sam Darnold. And what quotes did they use? The same quotes of Coach Kyle Shanahan before their game against the Jets, talking up how great Sam Darnold was. So there's a pattern there. Then I looked, Cowherd. He is represented by CAA. CAA is the same agency that represents Sam Darnold. Okay, there's a clue there too. Keep your eye on CAA. Well, CAA also represents Dan Orlovsky, who is promoting the Sam Darnold trade. And so it's the agency that's got, they are promoting this with their people that are out in the media and trying to push Sam Darnold to the Seahawks, to the 49ers. Everybody's talking up Sam Darnold, and it's the agency trying to get their guy paid.
That's actually fairly well thought out. And I think you're correct. And it's interesting because people often ask, well, why would Okun goes without an agent, right? Everybody goes, yeah, why would you have an agent? Sherman goes without an agent. Why would you have an agent in an agency? This is what do they even do?
This is why you have an agent.
This is what they do.
People have been talking Sam Darnold for a week. And so there's people out there that maybe aren't very good GMs and scouts that go, maybe we should take another look at Sam Darnold. You know, if the Seahawks and Pete Carroll is talking about how good Sam Darnold is, and they're actually thinking about replacing Russell Wilson with Sam Darnold, maybe we need to look back at that tape.
Yeah. It's funny too, though, if you just look at the nuts and bolts of that trade, like the idea that, okay, Seattle doesn't get their quarterback through the draft. They get Sam Darnold out of this trade, right?
Right.
What are you going to have to do with Sam Darnold next year if he plays well?
You're going to have to pay him.
You're going to have to pay him. So you're just, why would you go backwards in the quarterback hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
And still have to pay the guy. Like if you're going to go backwards in QB talent,
get a top 5 guy out of the draft.
Yes, and you pay him peanuts. Like that's
for
the whole
5 years.
Point. Yeah. And, so for mediocre Sam, you're going to have to pay him Dak money probably. Like because mediocre Dak got that money. Like why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense.
Not only that, as if you're dealing with the Jets and you're getting first round picks in return. Those are your own first round picks that you gave away for Jamal Adams.
Yeah.
You're just getting them back.
And also too, like all these future firsts from the team that you're trading Russ to, what kind of value do those have? I mean, I think we can all say, let's say Russ went to the Bears for that 3 firsts and a third and a couple of starters.
They're already a playoff team. They were a playoff team last year with Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah. So cool. For the next 3 years, we get to pick 28th. Neat. Like, we've seen what the team does with the 27th pick in the draft every year.
But you have 3 of those.
Ooh. People just get hung up on the idea, oh, it's a first round pick. Well, what first round pick? Number 18 is a lot different from 2.
In all these trade scenarios, like the one with the Jets, Orlovsky was very explicit in mentioning that the Jets weren't having to give up the 2nd overall pick. Well, that's what it would take, though. It would take a team having to give up a top 5 pick.
Yeah, I want Darnold and the pick. And then that way I can, if the kid can sit for half a season, we'll see what we have in Darnold. Maybe we audition him for the rest of the league. He plays well. Trade him if we like the kid, or the other way around. That's what that would be about the only thing that would interest me.
That would,
even then, you're giving up a franchise quarterback in his prime because he's having a pouty fit.
Catfish!
That.
The only interest in that actually happening is if you know that he absolutely wants to leave and is going to leave in the future.
Yeah, but with the franchise tags and everything, that's like 97 years in the future.
It's a long ways off.
Right. So, like in NFL terms, it literally is 100 years away that Russ could force his way out of town, right? He ain't mailing in a season. That ain't happening. Like because he cares so much about his legacy, like he's going to try to ball out every year.
Well, and if he was unhappy after the Arizona game, as reported, and that was the Russell Wilson that we got in the second half of the season, okay.
Look, I can say that Russ's decline in play in the second half of the season had nothing to do with his emotional state and a lot more to do with the fact that they couldn't check it down.
And it may have had something to do with Pete being in his ear about turning the ball over and not doing that.
Right.
Because we did see a lot of clutching as for some of those deep throws that he probably could have made.
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier in the pod, I think this year you turn it over to Russ, a la Peyton Manning with the Broncos and go that way. Just be like, look, you run that side of the ball. If you turn it over a bunch, you turn it over a bunch. We're going to live with it.
There were even issues. Go back and listen to Mike Holmgren. And when he would get into it with Matt Hasselbeck back in the day, they had to develop an understanding to where Matt says to Coach Holmgren, you can't talk to me as I'm coming off the field. And like, you have to give some time. And that's one of the things that Holmgren said, that he would be so upset if Matt made a mistake that he would light into him. And so they had like a cooling off period. They had an understanding between those two that there was a cooling off period before they could talk.
Yeah. And whatever the rub is here with Pete and Russ, it's not like either one of them are super caustic dudes. You know, it's not like if it was Rex Ryan in a beef with somebody or, you know, Bill Cowher in a beef with somebody, right? One of his players, or shoot, even the Big Show, like in a beef with somebody. Like, this is Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. I mean, for reals.
Yeah.
Like, how sideways can that conversation go? Or golly gee, I'm really very disappointed sort of that we haven't gotten a different offensive lineman.
Maybe Pete and Russ also need to go to Fargo and talk on those voices and have the meeting there.
Look, I just solved everything, so
you're welcome.
Right there. That's what they need to do.
Let's get to the second half of the show. Getting into the second half of the show, and Adam, see, it turns out we just had to wait a little bit. The Seahawks, they had to know, just like feel their ears burning that we were talking about them and our disdain that they had not done anything on the offensive line. And then they just go out and they trade with the Raiders. Now they don't get the guy from the Raiders that we were talking about in the first half of the show with Rodney Hudson because he goes to the Cardinals in a trade, but they go out and get Gabe Jackson.
Yeah. So just a little peek behind the curtains. Usually when Brandon and I take a break, it's like, okay, I'm going to go pee. And then like come back. Right. Uh-huh. And in this case, we took the whole afternoon off.
Yeah. I had to eat birthday cookies and birthday chili. And so there was stuff to do on my end that, it just took a little bit longer.
It took a little bit longer and it turned out to be the right thing because it was a roller coaster of emotions there for a minute. Like I had this thought. I see the alert that Rodney Hudson gets traded to the Cardinals for a 3rd and a 7th round pick swap. And I'm like,
catfish. Right. We were just talking about how we would give up a 2 for Rodney Hudson. And what do the Cardinals do? They give up a 3, which is less, and they get back a 7th. So again, a pick swap. And yes, I was equally upset about that.
Yeah. So the 2 would have gotten it done and a pick swap was involved. So I guess what I want to say about that is we were right as to his trade value. And then, yes, the Seahawks go out and trade a 5th rounder for guard Gabe Jackson. And, to be honest, I dig it.
Yeah, Gabe Jackson is fine. Now, I don't think he's like the Pro Bowl caliber type guy that you get with Rodney Hudson at center. And there are issues with getting Gabe Jackson and it's kind of a similar issue with Kevin Zeitler. Although Gabe Jackson did start his career, his first couple of seasons at left guard before moving over to right guard. And so now you have to wonder, is Damian Lewis, is he going to switch over?
No. You put Gabe Jackson in a left guard.
Okay. Adam's calling it right now.
He can do it. He's a seasoned professional. But the one thing I do like about just kind of looking at some of his PFF grades and things like that, he's a pretty damn good pass blocker. I mean, he's not amazing. He's a good one.
Yeah, he grades out better as a pass blocker than a run blocker. But that's not what stood out to me when I was looking at his PFF page. It was that he gave up 0 sacks in 2020 and played an entire full season.
Yeah. And very durable, plays a lot every single year. And that's something that we missed with Upati like the last year here.
Right.
So for a 5th rounder, yeah, I mean, there's your value that you were talking about earlier. And another thing that I like is that he graded very low, which is a good thing. This is like golf, in penalties.
Yeah, I think just 3 penalties last year. Now, the thing that is a little bit of a bummer with the fact that you don't get Zeitler, you do end up with Gabe Jackson. It's a $2 million difference. You're paying $2 million more, and you do lose a 5th round pick. But still, it's that's relatively minor. The Seahawks did make another move, though, while we were on break as well.
Oh, they did.
They got Rams tight end Gerald Everett.
Oh, no way. I totally missed this. I was out splitting wood, picking up all my mess out here now that the snow's melting. I did not see that. Gerald Everett is a good player.
Yeah.
Was that just a free agent signing?
It was.
What was the contract?
1 year, $6 million.
Okay.
Here's my problem with the approach to free agency so far. The 1 year deals, I don't like them, especially in this year, because I feel like there's a way to structure the deals to where you can get favorable cap relief in 1 year, still do a 3-year contract, still have a player under team control, escalate their salary in a way that you keep them at a reasonable level 3 years down the road. Because with Gerald Everett, he's a youngish guy. I think he's 29. Ahkello Witherspoon, he's going into his second contract. I feel like you could get a player at a lower cap value and spread out the signing bonus over the 3 years. Maybe you do have to pay a little bit more, but I think for what you gain in a lower cap amount for 2021, you extend a little bit of risk, but still you're spreading out the amount of risk over multiple years.
So kind of what you're getting at is you're buying low this year, right? Because the cap is lower. And so the overall number of the contract going forward would be a little lower.
It's not buying low in the sense of the players not getting as much money. They're getting all the money that they were going to get for this year. They're just getting it in a signing bonus. And the Seahawks just get the benefit of spreading the signing bonus over 3 years rather than paying a 1-year contract that they can completely get out from under. And I think there's ways to do that with 3-year contracts too. You see it all the time. It's that you get to spread out that risk of the 1-year deal over 3 years.
Sure. But I think overall, guys are getting less money this year than they would have if the cap had gone up, like it normally would have if COVID hadn't have been around.
Yeah, there's probably some of those top tier pass rushers that, like Shaq Barrett, who would be getting more this season than he took.
No, and I think that's kind of with everybody, because the numbers we're talking about are like, oh, yeah, for most of these signings, you're like, that makes sense. There hasn't been any that you've been like, holy schmoly, right? Which is what we normally see when
there was one holy schmoly moment, and that was when Taysom Hill got his restructured deal. And they said it was an extension and that it was worth 4 years, $140 million, but it was void years. And again, they're able to spread out the signing bonus over the course of another 4 years.
I don't know about that stuff, man. That seems like voodoo down there in New Orleans. That seems like that's something that eventually bites you in the butt. Like that seems like a dirty trick that is probably going to catch up with you. I don't know why, but it just feels that way. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a contract guy. That's one of those things where it's like, it feels like you're gaming the system and robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit. And like, at the end of the day, you're going to find yourself right up against it again.
The way they did it, and really when you're working with void years, you can pick any amount really that you want to if you're spreading it over the course of multiple years.
Right, because it doesn't matter.
The weird thing is that it feels like a poison pill type deal like the Seahawks did with Nate Burleson and Steve Hutchinson, because Steve Hutchinson went to the Vikings. He signed for a certain number, and then the Seahawks signed Nate Burleson for the exact same contract, but it really wasn't worth that. And Taysom Hill signed the 4-year, $140 million extension, which is the same amount that Russell Wilson got, was 4 years, $140 million. There's only been 2 contracts, and it's those 2 guys.
Yeah. This feels like some GM wizardry that we don't quite fully understand.
There's something going on. That's for sure. And
it stinks.
It almost seems like it's some kind of message to Russell Wilson or Russell Wilson's agent for putting the Saints down as one of the teams he'd be willing to trade for, but really not willing to, but the Seahawks really not in good faith willing to try and trade Wilson. I don't know. There's something going on there.
You think so? I think that's a bridge too far for me. But I think they're just doing what they're doing. I don't know that there's any sort of Russell Wilson FU going back here.
It could be. I'd like to think, and maybe not FU, but kind of like the Spaceballs handshake sign.
Maybe. I don't know. It's tough not knowing, but at least we have a guard now.
We do have a guard with Gabe Jackson, and now you have to wonder if center is next, and where do they go? Do they go on the higher end? Do they bring back Ethan Posick? Are you leaning any particular way?
I feel like they can't go back to Ethan Posick.
they have to do something different, whether it's Austin Blythe from the Rams, whether it's Nick Martin from the Texans,
right?
Something in that neighborhood.
Hey, and maybe Blythe playing against Aaron Donald in practice all the time, like he knows Aaron Donald's tricks a little better. Maybe he'd be a good Aaron Donald stopper. I couldn't even take it serious throughout the whole statement when I said it. But
because that position doesn't exist in the NFL.
It does not. It's like calling Tyronn Lue the Iverson stopper
right
back in the day. What a joke show.
Well, so the good news was we took a break. We made some calls to John Schneider, said, get something done or else this is going to be a really negative episode.
Right.
And he made something happen.
Yeah. So you're welcome, everybody.
Everybody's getting their $1,400 stimulus checks. This is all good news for everybody.
Yeah. And I would be lying if I said we weren't directly responsible for all of it.
Let's welcome some new members of the flock.
Oh, sure.
Let's start with welcoming Joe Deutsch to the flock. He came in with $60 via PayPal and no note, but welcome to the flock to Joe.
Hell yeah. Appreciate Joe coming in. It feels like a good member.
Yeah.
See, that's what happens when you don't give a note. I can't riff on it. I can't like build you up and like that. Here. So I think we got to do what we've done in the past. Like what I know about Joe Deutsch is that he is a SpaceX engineer and he actually got the latest Starship prototype to touch down and land itself. He was also responsible for it then blowing up shortly thereafter. So it was a little mixed bag for Joe.
Joe could do a little bit better, but also in an awesome position to be able to do that sort of thing.
Right. So I'm going to give him 70% success rate there.
Welcome to the flock, Joe. John comes in at 36 for the entire year, and no note from John Chochette or Chochet, but welcome to the flock to John.
So what I'm not going to do is try to pronounce his last name, but John is well known in his community as being the guy you call when you need to get a cat out of a tree. He's a master at it. He's like he's a ninja at climbing trees, man.
Is he?
He's saved a bunch of little girls like broken hearts, like by taking kittens out of the tree. He's a man of the people.
Is he like a fireman? Are firemen the only people who get cats out of trees?
No, well, I mean, ordinarily that's who you would call. But see, here's the thing with John is he likes to wear a cape. So this is actually more like his version of being a superhero. He's got a whole costume. It's blue.
We got awesome members of the flock.
Yeah.
Luke Sim from Australia comes in at $7 a month, $7 Australian
Please,
dollars.
God, tell me he sent a note.
Luke sent in a note. And
good.
Now, Luke made up for the no notes because Luke sent us a really long note. But the timing worked out well because we have lots of no notes. Luke made up for it. He says, Hi, Adam and Brandon from Perth, from the west coast of Australia, I write. From a country with no media coverage of the Seahawks, you guys are a godsend, especially Brandon with his other work. Adam, I agree with most of his opinions, especially considering the recent Russ controversy, even if there was one. Out here, East Coast games start at 2 a.m. Imagine my enthusiasm for what Russ showed against the Bills. Also, week later, Cards game, that goal line INT play, seriously, it was a putrid option. DK open in the end zone. Imagine the criticism a Goff, Jimmy G, Darnold, or Bridgewater would have copped if they would have thrown the pass that Baker intercepted and Metcalf ran him down. In my humble opinion, Russ, after that moment, never the same player for the rest of the year. I love Russ. My nephew stretches the shirt I bought for him as a 4-year-old. He's 7 now and loves him just as much as me. My nephew lives in a small town on the East Coast called Geelong, near where I grew up. Geelong Cats, or Geelong, play in the biggest Australian rules football league called the AFL. Geelong had a population of 250K at the time, yet 10 years ago had a great team. Multiple titles won and players denied bigger contracts to stay together for continued success, and a bonus was off-the-field contracts set them up for life. These players sacrifice financial success for team success. I admire the man Russell Wilson is, and he deserves every penny. For legacy, why does he not take a pay cut? Best GM and coach combo he's going to see in his career. I'm sure when he retires, Russ will be taking more money than we dream of. Take the financial hit and give us elite linemen. Same argument about Les can happen with Wags. I'll be shattered if KJ leaves. Adam is so right. As much as Tampa won a Super Bowl, they were a spud organization for years. I love my Hawks because we small market folks beat the odds and are consistently great. Go Hawks from Luke.
Go Hawks, Luke. I wish everybody could see the unedited version when Brandon has to read these emails, because it is incredibly difficult to get somebody else's cadence down. Yeah. Like, for example, like I hate texting because I feel like it totally hamstrings me. You know, I've talked about like we need italics for the sarcasm, right? But yeah, it does. It totally makes it difficult. And you powered through Luke's email, and I can tell you and Luke speak a little differently. But I agree with his sentiment overall. It's like, man, why don't you take a couple less bucks like Brady, or restructure it, or however the hell it's done, and put your money where your mouth is. But on the flip side, if you're Russ, I mean, do you trust that's where they're going to put the money?
Right. You almost have to see it first before you actually make the deal. So now with the Gabe Jackson signing, you wonder if now is when the restructure comes to make room for that. Because with the Gabe Jackson salary, it's just under $10 million a year. But if Russ restructures, that opens up $12 million for the year.
Right. And then you're in play to, go after more offensive linemen, whoever you might think could come in and make a difference. But I guess we'll see. We'll see where Russ is really he wants to go. Does he want to really win? Is that it? Or does he want to make his money and be a celebrity quarterback? And these are the things we're going to find out.
Luke gives a PS, says, gotta admit, I've been a freeloader, plenty journeys around Australia where podcasts would last beyond without seeing a car on the road. When COVID hit, I was a manager at a roadhouse at a place called Fitzroy Crossing. Very remote and not a very good place for the soul. Crime was present, and I was called out constantly throughout nights to secure property. Through the stress of the situation, I met someone online, and we met up in the nearest civilization, a Broome. Once COVID hit, we talked and invited me to live with her in Perth, 2,500 kilometers away. There, I met the most beautiful person who allowed me to get away from my chef days. Without her support, I'd never realize my dream career as a disability worker. So today, I'm being the best worker I can, sneaking off on the odd four-wheel drive expedition and other awesome activities I can find. To get my client, often it's gridlock, and when shows drop, gridlock is bearable. When Adam set his goal for the number needed for him to live his dream as a full-time analyst, 2 shows a week, mate, I hope your dream comes true for you, boys. You deserve no less. Catfish! Legends, and thank you. From Luke.
Luke's my boy. He gets it. He gets it. I just want to do this instead of grinding wheels. And the other thing, little less known about Luke, he's basically Patrick Swayze.
Yeah, well, with the Roadhouse.
That's what I'm saying. It sounds like you had to go thump some skulls and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds like a dream job, though. But I suppose that, like, only for so long, that would be the dream job, right?
Yeah, you like in your early 20s?
Yeah.
when you're pliable and you heal up after you take a shot?
Well, thanks, Luke. Terrell Buchanan also came in at $5 a month. Welcome to the flock, Terrell.
I got to make up something about Terrell, too. All right. Terrell is the fastest commuter to work in his town. He knows all the little back roads, and he drives a little too fast and a little too furious.
Just slow it down a little bit, Terrell.
No, all gas, no brake, Terrell. Don't listen to him.
No, we need you. We need you. Just take it down a notch.
I'm not saying he's going to die or anything. I'm just saying go big or go home. If you ain't first, you're last.
And I'm saying be safe.
Yeah, that feels like the messaging that would come out of each of us.
Gordon Masterson also comes in £4 a month. Welcome to the flock to Gordon.
Gordon. Yeah. I mean, I've got nothing. I'm out. You guys you've sapped my creativity. I want to come up with something great about Gordon. I think he does have a prototype for a new elevator, actually, that will require a tenth of the energy to, raise material up and down a building, and it can never fall.
Elevator innovation has been that somebody needed to fill that gap, and Gordon did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He nailed it.
Also, a big thanks to David Stecker, who came in with a $12 donation via PayPal. So welcome to Flock to David.
Yeah. David, he does things and he's really good at it. So good job, David. And genuinely thanks, man. I don't know.
Keep it up, Dave. All right. Well, here we go. We can close this off now with a couple more messages. We've got Blake Nelson, who came in with a $30 bonus, says this is to say thanks for the uncatfished episodes. I usually could take or leave swearing, but I am really enjoying the expletive-filled episodes. Also, just wanted to say I share Adam's feelings on Russ. Every time that guy opens his mouth now, it sounds like Pavarotti warming up. Me. Go Hawks.
That's really good by you.
Pancakes over waffles.
Oh, well, you had me till then. And then he clearly, screwed the whole thing up there. But, yeah, I mean, you're Pavarotti. Spot on.
Thanks, man.
They should make room on the 3 tenors for you. You'd be the 4th.
Hey, between whatever people email in for me to sing and whenever I get to sing Lisa in Seattle, that's all I need. That's all I need.
Damn. Man, that just has a ring every time. Hairs on my neck stood up.
Jeremy Green came in with changing from the monthly to the annual donation. He's up to $60 for the year. Says, all right, you talked me into it. I'm updating my membership from monthly to yearly. I'd love to say it was due to your stellar off-season content, the fantastic uncatfished episodes of the show in Patreon, or fabulous Facebook group content. But honestly, I just want those stainless steel beer glasses. Go Hawks!
Jeremy knows what's up. He's always known what's up.
And Andrew Mack updated his pledge from $3 to 54 Australian for the year.
Damn. Going big.
Yeah.
I don't know what the conversion rate is, but I'm going to pretend it's equal. And that seems like a big deal.
Just so we can feel like we're getting a raise.
Yeah.
But it's not equal. But it's
is
still
equal.
Best to feel that way.
Okay.
So a big thanks and welcome to the flock to all of our new members. And, Adam, for the next show, I just realized it's the middle of the month. So for everybody who went to tinypiecesofseahawksstuff.com to put in for the consolation prize for our Pick'em League, we should be announcing that then for the next show.
Oh, all right. Well, something to look forward to.
Look forward to that in the next show. And also, next show, we'll be thanking all of our members at the $12 and above level, too.
Yeah, and that's become quite the deal. Like, that gets long now. It's lengthy.
It's over 100 people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, what a bunch of badasses.
Speaking of badasses who came in, Daniel Weinholtz with a post from the Facebook Ring of Honor.
Okay.
Says, Adam, in the latest pod, you said you weren't a fan of cancel culture for things that happened 15 years ago, unless they are, quote, stabby things, unquote. I believe about a year ago, you threatened to shiv my boss on the podcast. I am calling on someone to open a petition on change.org to cancel Adam's Hobo Shack podcast. Let's see you backtrack now.
Well, let's see me backtrack now, Daniel. I actually read this while I was driving, and I wanted to respond, but again, I was driving, so I didn't.
You were just reading while driving. You didn't want to go full on texting while driving.
Yeah, I mean, I have limits. So here's the thing. When I was talking about that, we were talking about OJ, who actually stabbed his ex-wife to death,
allegedly,
in a fit of rage. You can say allegedly all you want, but I don't buy that whole I can't fit my hand into the glove thing that he pulled.
And also wrote a book that said I did it with if in really tiny print.
And then there's that part. So OJ actually being stabby, cancel. Me threatening Daniel's boss so he gets a raise and a promotion, not canceled. I didn't actually stab him, and I didn't even actually go to Idaho to try to stab him. I didn't do any of that. I didn't hide in the alley like Kato Kalin. I didn't do nothing.
You only publicly threatened to stab him. Totally different. Totally different.
It is totally different. A knife enters somebody in one. I just talk my, out of my ass on the other. So try to cancel me now. Backtrack, done. Bam, nailed it.
Michael from Hamburg, Deutschland comes in, says, "Hi, Brandon and Adam. In regards to why the Seahawks are the most popular team in Germany, I have to say that, of course, the Seahawks are naturally just the best franchise. But NFL Live broadcast starting in Germany when the Seahawks had their Super Bowl appearance might have helped a bit. Greetings from Hamburg. P.S. The biggest German cities are Berlin in the east, Hamburg in the north, München in the south, and Munich, and Cologne in the west." See, I see them written in English, and I just have to say the German word.
Yeah, there you go. So they got big cities everywhere is what I'm hearing there.
4 big cities in the 4 corners of Deutschland.
Right. That feels like a little, it wasn't like Narnia like that. Like there were like 4 powers in the, no. What am I thinking of? I can't find it.
Wizard of Oz. You had the good witches in the north and the south, and the bad witches in east and west.
See, that's why this show is gold, Brandon, is because we've been together since kindergarten, and you know what I'm thinking.
I could pull references from
I don't know. There's some cities in some different places. What am I thinking of, Brandon? Got it. Wizard of Oz. Boom.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Thanks for saving me.
Levi in Adelaide, Australia says, "Hey guys, hope you're well. How's things? Just listened to your latest show and heard Adam's rant on solar panels. I thought I'd take this opportunity to give you some information. I am a qualified electrician and fully accredited."
Oh, but let's stop him right there. That means he's a wizard.
Yeah.
Yeah, because electricity's magic, and I deal with electricians all the time, and they're all wizards. So, but continue.
Like Raiden from Mortal Kombat.
Yes, absolutely.
"I'm a qualified electrician and fully accredited to install and design solar systems and have been doing so for the last 5 to 6 years. The truth about solar is that your panel capacity in watts is irrelevant compared to the inverter, box as Adam calls it. If you have a 5 kilowatt inverter, even if you have 10 kilowatts worth of solar panels, you can only generate 5 kilowatts of electricity. Solar panels work best in cold, sunny conditions. Reducing the temperature allows the panels to run at higher voltages, allowing for better outputs. Batteries are a different beast altogether, and as long as you have a big enough system to charge the battery, it can supply your whole home for about 3 hours, depending on the size of the battery. A Tesla Powerwall 2 is 13 kilowatts of storage, for example, and is probably the most well-known battery on the market. I'm pleased to hear Adam's rants on solar and that he's proud to have it. I love hearing stories like that. I love how he thinks what I do for a living doesn't make sense too. Appreciate you both. Thank you for keeping this offseason fun and enjoyable. Hope we get a decent offensive lineman too. We're getting a ring this year. We are one good offensive lineman and defensive line player away from a championship. I can feel it. Have a great week. Hopefully I wasn't too confusing and helped in some way. Go Hawks. Kind regards, Levi the Aussie.
Levi spitting facts. No, he's 1,000,000% right about the inverter being a choke point, so to speak. But you can get bigger inverters. It's not like you can't get like a 13 kilowatt inverter. Like you're a 1300 watt inverter. You can do that. I mean, if you want to power like bigger things, it totally can happen. As far as the batteries,
I can power my house. What I'm hearing from Levi is I could power my house with solar if I wanted to.
You can. But what he said is that you could power a typical American home for like 3 hours off of the solar. And that's pretty right, because all of the light bulbs are usually incandescent light bulbs, and they're horribly inefficient. Your refrigerator eats up a bunch. There's a bunch of stuff there. So if you want to power your home completely off the solar, you got to change some little things about the way you consume the electricity. There's definitely something to that. You can't just plug in your 52-inch TV and watch that for 48 hours while running your electric oven and drying a load of clothes. That ain't happening.
Sure.
But if you're smart about it and you recognize its limitations, it's the most freeing thing in the world.
Well, I'm hoping to get there one of these days. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'd offer to be your solar consultant, but you have Levi, who's probably better at this.
I've got Levi now.
And then you can hire a local wizard to carry out the faraway wizard's instructions.
Got an email from Corbin in Alaska. This may have come in a while. I may have had this just in standby. He says, hey guys, I've been listening for quite a while now and absolutely love the show. Adam's rants have me laughing like crazy at like 11 o'clock at night. You both need to get to making 2 episodes a week. They are what's getting me through all of this. Catfish! The Rams and 49ers, and go Hawks.
Catfish! Yeah, Corbin, I'm with you, buddy. You know, it's kind of fun to know. I mean, we've had a few emails from Alaska, right? Where people are like, yeah, man, you get me through some stuff up here. Yeah. Because it's hard. It's hard in Alaska. And to think that we might be a difference maker for people living up there. Damn, we're doing a public service.
Always appreciate hearing that. And yeah, I probably could have read that one sooner, but we got to spread these out.
Absolutely.
So if you want to get in the flock, you can go to getintheflock.com or you can go to Adam's podcast, hoboshack.com. Mm-hmm. They'll both take you to the Patreon page. If you want to help support the show, you can get a shout out on this show. We can send you some stuff. It's good for everybody. Getintheflock.com.
Absolutely. And, just a little podcast Hobo Shack update here. Mm-hmm. My dad's actually going to come out this weekend to the homestead. And we're actually going to plot out like which trees need to go down and what areas we need to kind of level out. He's got a big ass skid steer, and we're going to kind of level out his place because my whole property is kind of sloped.
Yes,
for the most part,
it's on an entire slope.
Yeah, which I dig. I grew up on a flat acre. Flatland bores me. I don't like it. I'm not into the flatland.
Yeah,
but I'm gonna dig out some flatland apparently. And so the preliminary surveying of where this is going to go is going to happen this weekend, and now I just got to wait for the ground to unthaw.
Outstanding.
Yeah, still got a couple inches of snow.
Progress being made.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying it's happening. So if you think it's just a pipe dream that I'm just trying to steal your money and not do anything with it, we're literally working towards this.
This is legit what this money is going toward.
Yeah. And not only that, the DCH, he's going to come out here in like June or July and help with some construction.
Nice.
Yeah. He's going to come out, visit his folks and, spend a day or two out here and, swing a hammer.
Now, I'm a little bit disappointed that the picture that we got to hang up in your Hobo Shack, like Shaquille and Shaquem Griffin, are going to be down in Jacksonville now, but it's still a kick-ass picture.
It's a kick-ass picture, kick-ass memory for kick-ass dudes.
Yeah.
I have no problem. I get to remember them that way now on my Hobo Shack wall.
Yeah, not in those ugly Jacksonville uniforms.
I mean, they did it to themselves. I get Florida's home. That's fine. I don't know why you'd ever choose to live in Florida, but people do. We know them. Lovely folks, the people that we like very much. But I just question your choice of residency.
You got snakes and alligators. I guess we got bobcats and grizzly bears, but
yeah, but they're big. You can see them coming,
and they
snakes
don't.
Are
and if
sneaky.
you make noise, they just really don't mess with you usually.
Yeah, for the most part, snakes are plotting to kill you at all times, every day. 365 days of the year. It's what they're doing.
Yeah,
it's all they're focused on. So watch out.
That reminds me, I watched the first Indiana Jones again for the first time in a long time this last week.
Yeah,
it's a good movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, young Indy had himself a snake encounter, kind of like I did. Not to that extreme, but it was enough to shape my opinion on those evil bastard creatures.
What do you say we get into some do better and better at life?
I think that sounds like a plan.
Well, my do better this week is for Mike Silver. Screw that guy. I had these clips in my rundown of bad Russell Wilson takes. And this one was just, it was so bad that I had to move it to the do better segment. And because it was my least favorite one, I debated whether or not I should even play it because it bummed me out that much. Here's Mike Silver on the Russell Wilson situation.
Look, I think all things are on the table. And remember, you have an unconventional ownership situation in that the late Paul Allen's sister Jody has been more detached and kind of let Pete run the show. I think if you had a more engaged owner, this would have probably come to a head earlier, and they would have either moved on from Pete or figured out that they have to move on a quarterback, or solved it. But, you have kind of those dynamics in play now. And, I believe if Paul Allen were alive, that probably Russell Wilson would already have been traded.
Mike Silver, let me get this straight. If Paul Allen were still alive, he thinks that Paul Allen would have solved this by now, and that Paul would have traded Russ by now to get rid of whatever the problem is that Mike Silver perceives. This kind of nonsense, trying to decide what a person who is not with us anymore would have done, it's gross. Why would you even do that? And just to hear that come from, I have respect for Mike Silver and the news that he puts out and the work that he does, but for him to come out and say stuff like this, man, do better.
So Mike Silver just poked the bear he probably shouldn't have poked, number one. Number two, Mike Silver, noted 49ers fan. Okay. Grew up in the Bay Area.
Okay.
And yeah, loves himself some 49ers. So it doesn't surprise me for him to say something so dirty. That is so dirty. And here's the thing. I would hope that all the engineers at Microsoft right now, the company that Paul Allen started with Bill Gates, took that to heart. Based in Seattle, all that. I'm going to guess that Mike Silver might lose a story or two in the ether of the internet and the computers. Maybe things don't go quite so smooth. Maybe his licenses just are up all of a sudden and he needs to renew. Maybe he needs to update something and all of a sudden none of his stuff works anymore. I think Mike Silver just did this to himself.
Watch that next Windows 10 update, Mike. When that comes through, I hope you're thinking to yourself, do I update? Do I really need to update? Because you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, because the ghost of Paul Allen's coming for your dumb ass.
Who you got this week?
All right, Brandon, my do better this week is for the writers in the national media that keep putting out this thing that Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson are in the same boat.
It's totally the same, Adam. What are you disagreeing about?
Totally the same. I saw a headline today, and I don't know if it's from the same writer that was putting this out a couple of weeks ago that, Russell and Watson were in the same boat. But this article was entitled something to the point of Russell and Deshaun should both be furious with their teams.
Okay.
Let's break that down for a second. The Texans can suck catfish, and Deshaun has been under the thumb of Bill O'Brien for the last, decade or however long he's been there.
Yeah, 4 years.
It seemed like 45, I'm sure, to Deshaun. It had to have, with all the dumbass moves that Bill O'Brien made throughout his tenure there to totally tank that team and just destroy an organization, right? Where Russell, I don't know, maybe been in one of the most consistent winning organizations in all of football in a city that has embraced him completely, where he has had an impact that is immeasurable, and they should both be furious at their teams for what? Russ wants a couple extra offensive linemen. Watson wants a catfishing team around him, like every position. All right. There's an enormous difference between these two situations. And for every one of these writers to try to convolute these two things as being equal, do better.
Yeah, man. Totally not the same. And one of these two is the winningest quarterback in NFL history through 9 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is a really good quarterback, but not to that same level. And unfortunately, he has been with a coach. Man, well, I don't want to wish Deshaun Watson teaming up with Sean Payton because that could be bad news. But
that could be detrimental. We don't need that. Stop it, stop it, stop it.
We don't need that. We don't want them going even to the 49ers. We don't need any more competition within the
I don't
division.
want to go to the Bears.
Yeah, send them to the Dolphins. That makes all the sense. Or the Jets. Something.
Yeah. Yeah. I also wanted to call out Bears fans this episode too, man. They were out of their gourd this last week, man. Like with that whole private flight thing from Seattle to Chicago was hysterical because, and you were better at this than me, because my first thought when I saw that, I didn't like check what the flight was or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, sure. There's never any private flights from Seattle to Chicago. Being that, I don't know, Boeing has major corporate offices in both cities. Like, I'm sure there's never been a CEO from Boeing or an executive vice president that's taken a private flight from their airline manufacturing business from Seattle to Chicago. That seemed absurd right there. And then you dropped this knowledge bomb on me.
Yeah, the first thing I did was I Googled the flight number. And when you do that, it's freaking Alaska Airlines daily flight from Chicago to Seattle. Like that happens just every day.
No, but Russ was on there. Russ is a spokesman for Alaska Airlines. I'm sure he was there on Alaska's behalf and yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, Bears fans were a little bit psychotic. I think
they were already chalking it up.
Oh, they thought it was going to happen. I heard from a friend of mine who I had not heard from in probably 3 years, but was
it Nickerson?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was a Navy buddy of mine that's a hardcore Bears fan. And he hit me up and he's like just proud as punch that he just knows that Russell Wilson's coming to the Bears and how moronic the Seahawks are for, shopping him around.
So I hope to God you just texted him a screenshot of the headline. Seattle is not trading Russ.
Have you seen the Wheel of Fortune that it has the 4 letters on top and it's the 6 letters on the bottom and just the L and the ON are filled in on the bottom? And it's the guy saying Russ Wilson, and then the next screen it's Andy Dalton.
That's pretty funny.
It's pretty funny.
I had not seen that. I've always been terrible at that game. That was out of all the game shows. Like I was never good at guessing the word on the deal there. But I even saw one Bears fan or Bears writer be like, Russell isn't even here yet, but I'm already tired of him.
What?
Yeah, that was the title of the article.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's a special kind of psychosis there.
My favorite one is when I see people suggesting that the Bears signed Andy Dalton to trade in a deal now with this was the missing piece that they needed in the trade for Russell Wilson because Seattle needed a quarterback. And so signing Andy Dalton to a 1-year, $10 million deal to include in the trade package, that was the ammo that they needed.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Not to mention that Andy Dalton signed for 1 year, $4 million for the Cowboys last year and really didn't show a ton. And now they're signing him to a $10 million deal. If the Seahawks really wanted him, they could have just signed him and then traded Russ.
Yeah, I think this is a condition that is born from the fact that they dye their rivers green and then drink that water.
There's something going on here.
Yeah.
On to Better at Life. My Better at Life this week is for the 1984 Seattle Seahawks defense. And it's because Football Outsiders, they do their DVOA rankings. It's kind of wizardry, but they've been going back in time because they're trying to find ways to compare teams within the eras to teams today. And one of the things they did is that they found out that in 1984, the Seattle Seahawks had the second best defense in the NFL behind the 1984 Chicago Bears. And that defense would go on then to win the Super Bowl for the Bears in 1985. This is a Bears-centric second half of the show, apparently. Or
latter half of the second half of the show.
Latter half of the second half of the show.
Nailed it.
We're talking Bears. But it was the 1984 Seahawks that finished number 2 that year. Now, they finish just below where the 2013 Seahawks defense did in terms of DVOA. But now at least we have an idea for some of the people who are saying, old school, gosh, that 84 defense for the Seahawks with Kenny Easley, the first Legion of Boom with Dave Brown. Now we can have some sort of a ranking to be able to compare the two. Both outstanding defenses, very closely ranked, but it is the 2013 defense that just edges them out. But the fact that they were that good, they were right behind the Bears. We get some acknowledgement of it from footballoutsiders.com. The 1984 Seahawks, better at life than Skip Bayless.
This might be the first time that I praise DVOA.
It's like PFF scores. When they work out in your favor, they're an outstanding way to measure things. And then when they completely go against what you believe to be in the eye test and what your personal feelings are, the numbers are trash.
Yeah, it's very scientific. It's how we do things.
So that's how it works. And I think they recognize that.
All right, Brandon, my better at life than Skip Bayless this week is the lovely Brittany, who does all sorts of wonderful things for me and puts up with all my stuff and is willing to live off grid in a hobo shack in the woods and is very thoughtful and very nice and still hasn't gotten rid of me after last episode. She is a saint, a scholar, basically Mother Teresa reincarnated. Brittany, better at life than Skip Bayless.
Definitely not worthy of a nickname, the Acid Queen. That's just...
No, that's sticking. No, I wanted to throw that out there because a lot of people were like, ooh, can't wait to see your status as single. Hey, hit me up with Britt's digits. Nah, she's still here. I said she knew at the end of it. She did. And she was, to her credit, she was, I don't know, maybe 10% irked by it. And while she couldn't be here today for why we recorded this show, we're hoping for next week. She certainly has a rebuttal for what she claims are my, quote, accusations, which I call facts. So it should be fun.
Don't make me be the jury in this. Do not put that on me.
Oh, I'm not putting you in the middle of this, dude. We've all been together too long. What we're going to do is our little group of 6 friends that all hung out in high school, who I'm going to get Chad. I'm going to get Jen. I'm going to get Shanna and you will be the quadruple to adjudicate this.
I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Yeah. What could go wrong?
And with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. Gonna be pounding the Poona for 2 full years here. That feels good.